that spurred on the metal detecting. I had an uncle that metal detected, so he got me interested in it, and my neighbor across the street ended up having a metal detector, a cheap model, and I used that at their farmhouse, and we started finding some neat stuff. So my parents saw an interest, they bought me a nicer white smell detector at the time. Then I went to Tesoro. I used Tesoro brand detectors for a long while, and then I went to Fisher, and I haven't looked back. I like my Fisher. I'm not snobbish about metal detectors, but I'm fine using my Fishers, so that's what I use. But so I picked up a email name, I guess, Dayton Digger at prodigy.net. I've had that for eons. Yeah, you can tell how long. And I thought, man, it'd be neat to get together. I know there's other people in the Dayton area, Miami Valley area that metal detect and that, but I also do other stuff. I ball dig, which is primarily all I do anymore. It's why you haven't seen me at these meetings, because I haven't metal detected in 5 years probably, so balls are my passion and hobby nowadays. But anyhow, I thought, we get Dayton diggers, we can have ball diggers, we can have metal detectors, we can have, whatever kind of amateur treasure hunters, if you will, grouped together. And it took off. We started out in my basement with, what was it, 5 people, I think?
5, 6.
And then the next meeting we had a couple more. I remember Manny coming to the meeting with a 12-pack of beer. I'm like, yeah, he's a cool dude. And we just started, everybody seemed to get along real well. It was held in my basement in East Dayton, Walnut Hills, East Dayton kind of area. And we just all got along real well and talked about what we found and what our interests were, and we started developing somewhat of a club out of that. We started designing logos, and we started assigning officers. It was kind of volunteer at first, who wanted to do what, I guess. I think I did chairman for about 4 years, I think. And then with family and other hobbies getting in the way, I just kind of got away from metal detecting and dropped off of it. But it was really fascinating, some of the things that we did, I guess. I wanted to try to get the Dayton Diggers name out there a little bit, so we did the litter cleanup project on 75 at Dryden Road. So we had Dayton Diggers sponsor sign out there that everybody driving down the road. I thought, maybe that'll give us some notoriety. Some people start talking about the name, and then
Nancy and Diane were there in that group.
yes, and that was a busy place to be trying to do stuff. I hated it, but I thought
The off-ramp was really bad.
we're putting the name out there, so chances are you knock on a door, maybe somebody's like, Dayton Diggers, yeah, I seen that on the highway, and I looked it up, and I know who you guys are, and that helps out, to build some relation with your neighborhood. And I've noticed, like, a lot of you guys have found rings for people that have contacted Dayton Diggers probably through Facebook or some sort of media type of that. And the fabulous things you've done with, like finding the ring for the officer that got struck, what was that, Warren County down there?
Bill Baker.
Yeah, and the other projects that you guys have done, I mean, the Dayton Diggers name's out there. It's been a pretty successful club, I feel like. And what was it, 2009, January 2009 I started that? Which, I'm just astonished that was 15 years ago. I mean,
16,
yeah, it just amazes me. But good core group of people. I'm glad to see that people are still coming out to meetings in December and stuff, because they always seem to drop off then anyways. But like seeing the finds of the month continue. That was kind of something we developed as we went along. I thought it was pretty cool. You still pay out silver for, it was just something I just came up with. I don't know, I probably started with silver I had from metal detecting that. And I took Tony out, he hadn't found, you hadn't found any silver yet?
No, I hadn't found it.
And I told him, today you're gonna find your silver.
He told me it was going to be a mercury dime. And it was a place Steve called it Honey Hole. We won't say what it is even yet to this date. But it was a spot, I found it, which does mean Nickel Hill. And it's mercury came out of there?
Yeah, 16D mercury came out of the same place.
And,
It's a good one.
Yeah,
I know, only got to
and it
go,
wasn't me that found it.
only got to go a couple times. I remember the last time we went, Doug and I found almost 40 nickels between us.
Well, I used to not, I would go out to work sometimes, and I was like, I'll leave after I find a dozen silvers. Yeah, that's how it was. For a long time, that's how it was, so.
Yeah.
But then it
Where
got
was this?
cut off. It got cut off because some unscrupulous diggers came in and fouled everything up, so.
Usually the way it goes.
I was recently given permission to come out one more time and hit it, but then that manager is now gone from there, so I don't know if that still holds.
If you ever want to try it again, we'll be willing.
So that's why I was saying, my passion is really bottles now. Ron
How do you hunt
did-
bottles?
How do you hunt bottles?
Yeah.
I have three distinctive ways that I hunt bottles. Well, there's probably more than that, but we'll say privy digging. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with that. You locate essentially where they buried their trash back in the 1800s in the backyard in city homes. You didn't have trash removal service, so they would dig a vault in the backyard. A lot of times there's a little shack over top of that vault. We won't talk about that right now. But that's where they threw their bottles or cans, stoneware, anything they couldn't burn, because they burned their
Glass eyes.
typical trash. Huh?
Glass eyes.
That too, you can find all kinds of things. Tony's been gracious enough to hook us up with one of his family members, and we dug a privy at his family member's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a brick liner. Dayton are usually 6 to 10 feet deep, I'd say, on average, so it was lined with brick, you know, probably 4 foot diameter at the most, maybe closer to 3 at times. And they're just treasure vaults. It's like you can learn a lot about the family that lived there. You find a lot of medicines. You assume that probably older family lived there. You find kids' toys and soda pop bottles and that. You figure probably younger, and sometimes they're all whiskey bottles. Sometimes they're all dairy bottles. So you know you learn a lot about the people that lived there by what you find.
How do you know where to find the privies on the property?
It takes a special skill.
I bet the grass is growing better there.
Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes there is obvious spots sometimes where the grass is greener right over the septic. I mean the outhouse.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
The one you were talking about by Diane's relative, that's where you told Manny and I, go out and see if you can find it, and we did.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Because I listened to you.
Yeah, it's easy, because what we're using is I shouldn't say it's easy, it's not really easy, but I take a spring metal steel, it's like 5/16 diameter, I believe, maybe 1/4 inch something. And it's probably, 4 or 5 foot, probably 5 foot long. And I put a pipe handle on the top, it's welded. And on the tip, there's a ball bearing that's larger diameter than steel shaft. So that only the resistance of that ball bearing is penetrating the ground while the rest of the shaft's going down a wide hole. So it makes it easier to push. And you push it down with the spring steel, you'll feel layers. If it's been dug, you'll feel like they threw stuff in. They threw coal ash this week, they threw wood ash this week, they threw cinders from the factory down the road, they threw a layer of trash. And so you'll actually feel yourself going through layers. And in Dayton, East Dayton, most places where I'm digging, it's probably about 4 foot deep. There's a hard packed clay, sand, gravel layer that the probe just don't want to go through. So if you're banging into that constantly, and then you go over and again, and then all of a sudden your hands go to the ground, it's probably been dug before. It's going to be loose, not so compacted. And then if you suspect that, and plus with the spring metal steel, you can hear a tink, tink, tink sound if you hit glass. It'll travel right through that spring steel. But at that point, you need an angle probe, and if it's privy, it's going to have walls. It was originally either wood, stone, brick. Sometimes it got created with other materials that come for free or whatever, railroad ties, whatever, barrels. But you're going to be able to probe. If it's stone or brick, you're going to bang into the walls. So you kind of mark your probe and take it out the same angle, and then trace back over on top of that hole, and you know your wall. You got a wall there. If it's stone lined, you're going to have white powder on the end of the probe. If it's brick, you're going to have orange powder on the probe. Problem comes in the wood liners, because most of the time the wood has rotted. So when the wood's rotted, you're feeling just for a different compaction. That's the ones I have trouble finding. Those are the hardest ones. So if you don't hit some glass, you may not want to dig it, but I've known privies where I've probed it several times, never hit glass, and then when you dig it, it's got the best stuff you've ever found in it. So there was laws that they had to keep the privy vaults clean, so they had honey dippers that came out and bucketed the waste away. And when they discontinued a privy vault, they were supposed to do the same and then sanitize it. Some people did, most people didn't. So sometimes you can dig a hole 6 to 10 feet deep, only to fill it back in with nothing. So it can be discouraging. So that's one way, privy digging. Number two, as I get older and lazier and whatever, creek walking was something I kind of almost feel like I pioneered it because I never really heard anybody talk about, but excuse me. Try to make a long story short. I went on a trip to North Carolina to dig bottles with a man named Scott Given, who has a YouTube channel. I think he had a web page or something back in the old days somewhere, but I've followed him for years. And there's a lot of old Pepsi bottles because Pepsi-Cola started in North Carolina, New Bern. So up here in Western Ohio, we didn't have early Pepsi. Pepsi came late to this southwestern Ohio area, so I wanted to find me an old Pepsi bottle. Not my favorite brand of pop by any means, but I just wanted to find an old Pepsi. So I went all the way down and dug with him. Didn't find a Pepsi, didn't find much of anything to bring back. Everything was broke. And on the way back, I got so tired that I stopped in Ohio, in southeastern Ohio, got a hotel room for the night. Next morning I woke up and I said, I should go look at that old creek going through town there. And I went over and looked at the creek, and I walked through a park, and I went over the edge, and the sun was shining down, water was clear. Everywhere you could look, there was balls just laying everywhere in the water. And I thought, well, what's the odds that those could be old bottles? So I went down the steep bank, worked myself down there, went over the water. The first, what looked like an old bottle I grabbed up, the top was broke off. I was like, oh, darn, but let's see what it is. So I cleared it off, and it was a circa 1909 soda ball called Rock and Rye, and it was from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I just drove all the way back from. But it turned out most of the bottles through there were old bottles. They were embossed beers, a lot of pre-prohibition beers, soda pops. There were some rare sodas came out of there, and I built quite the collection over the years. Ron has helped me. He's wonderful construction and stuff, and between him and I, we came up with a great man cave project. In the basement, I've got a huge room with just shelves and shelves of bottles, and he did a video on it. It's a 2-part series on, what's your YouTube?
Ron Fulcher, 69.
Ron Fulcher 69 on YouTube. You can see what I've got. It's a lot of bottles, but a lot of that stuff I dug or found creek walking. But another way that we do it is, well, let's also talk about.
Did you find the Pepsi in that creek?
Actually, I did find what they call the peanut Pepsi. It was a wasted bottle, and it's from the like 29, 30, 31, 1929, somewhere around there.
Mm.
And it was a rare. Had that town. I'm not gonna mention the town because I'm trying to keep the crowds down a little bit, but not that y'all are gonna rush out there. But it had that town name on the bottom that we were at, and it was a pretty rare bottle. And then I also found a nice green 1939 embossed Pepsi from another town. So I kind of filled my fix. I didn't get the earliest style, but I keep looking. But another thing you do besides privy digging, there's also like just dump digging. All the farms, back then, they did the same thing. They burned their trash and they'd have burlap bags or something that they'd throw the balls and cans in, and once they got a load, throw it in the wagon, throw it in the truck, and take it up somewhere that couldn't be plowed, couldn't build a house. It's wasteland to them. That's usually a bank over a creek or something, so they dump it down a steep bank. And we find those too, and find a lot of old bottles in those, so. And then the town dumps. The towns picked a ravine somewhere outside town or a low spot, and they started filling it full of trash, and it's been buried ever since, so it's a little tough to find them sometimes, but when you do, they pay off well. There's a lot of money to be had in bottles. I got one now that, guy offered me $1,500, I turned him down. I've got one that listed in the book for $2,500. I've sold a lot of $500 bottles, a lot of $100 bottles, but I mostly collect. But you find repeats or something you don't exactly. I don't collect beers, I don't collect milk, so I sell all that kind of stuff. But the other thing is we go to antique stores. We go to flea markets, antique stores, and sometimes you can buy a bottle for $5. I've done it a lot of times. Went and paid $5 to $10 for a bottle at an antique store, and then sold it for $80 to $150, or it was something I needed for my collection, and was happy to have it. So a fair amount of bottles came from that, especially on rainy days. I also do insulators. I'm not really an insulator collector, I'll say that. I will keep ones that are marked with the railroad, because I'm real big into railroad stuff. So like, we found some B&O insulators, white porcelain with B&O embossed on them. Stuff like that's interesting. Or if it's a telegraph company marked, or if it's something with a lot of weird color or bubbles or something unique, I'll keep. But it's fun finding them. I found out how to make a pole that I can actually get up there. It's time consuming, but you're spinning that thing off and poke it up when it's all the ground. That usually works. And then we also bought, probably the best investment I think I ever made was I got a gift card, Amazon gift card last Christmas, or a couple Christmas ago, I can't remember. But I went and bought this collapsible ladder. It's like probably this tall, maybe
It's shorter than that.
probably 4 foot tall.
It comes down to about something like this.
Yeah, about 4 foot tall. at
30
most,
pounds.
And then it spans up to 20 feet. So I just take it, put it right up against, I'm talking derelict poles that are in the woods that, abandoned lines and stuff like that, but just put it right up against the pole and climb up there and just unscrew them, look at them. Some of those are worth money too. I don't know a whole lot about them. I found some dump digging probably one year, and I took them to an antique insulator show, and they gave me a bunch of money for the ones I brought in there. So ever since then, I had a little interest in them.
You ever keep any of the studs, the threaded wood studs?
I do. I've got quite a few. I've had somebody give me some of the angled ones that I actually mount on my wall right in front of my window, so the insulators will right in front of the windows, the light comes through them. It's pretty good.
What about railroad dates, pins out of the ties?
I got tons of date nails that I pulled out of ties myself.
I got coffee cans full of those things.
One line I was on, it was probably the last year or about the last year date nail. If you don't know what a date nail is, the railroad took a large nail that was a composite that didn't rust like steel. It usually had something mixed in it, maybe copper or something. It was usually held up. And on the top of it was a two numbers, the year. I think the earliest ones I'm familiar with like 09. The last ones were used in the 60s or 70s. And they'd hammer it in the tie, they'd hammer it in the poles, and that would tell them when that went into use. That could let them know how long it's been in service, if it should be replaced, or maybe they use creosote in this one, they use some other kind of material in that one, they can see which one lasts the longest and so forth. But they're collectible too. I mean, just about anything old's collectible, it seems like, but yeah, I've found a lot of those. Well, starting to know the feeling myself, but,
Tell them a little bit about the Spring Valley privy dig.
Spring Valley Privy Dig, that was,
That was early on.
That was early, that was an interesting time, we got invited down there by like local historical society, and we were supposed to look at a different house, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working out there, we weren't able to probe, maybe there was, I can't even remember, outbuildings, too much development over the years. So, kind of a last ditch effort, she came up with this lot that had a hotel that was on the railroad, it was a railroad hotel in Spring Valley. And I said, yeah, that sounds great, so you go back to the back of the lot, and it's overgrown with trees and stuff, as you can see in the, I think it was the right rear corner, it was sunk down in a square. I'm like, that's gotta be a privy. And more often than not, this ain't always true, more often than not, if it's sunk down a lot, it tends to be the newest privy. And it's probably because they had more metal can stuff that rotted and collapsed over the years, stuff like that. So I said, well, if it was a hotel right on the railroad, they probably had multiple privies through the years, so we started probing over from that, and in the opposite left corner, we found a large square privy, and one in the center. So we opened up both of those. We had a whole bunch of Dayton diggers there, and we all took turns digging and that. We found some really nice stuff in those, they're pretty loaded. Those cobalt blue Wayne's diuretic elixirs, I think those are the best, but
And
we never did dig the third
when
one.
Shaker found it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
I
the
forgot.
Shaker Village, some sort of medicine cure or something, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's a real rare bottle.
Yeah.
Did we find any rings in the privies?
Rings?
Yeah.
Can't say as I've really found jewelry, but I have found coins, and oddly enough, I started metal detecting in the 70s. I did it a lot in the 80s, a lot in the 90s, and quite a bit into the 2000s. And I never could find a flying eagle cent. I kept finding 1859s with the no shield Indian heads, and I could never find flying eagle cent to save my life. And the last privy I dug in Dayton, at the bottom of the privy, about 12 feet down, I found a flying eagle cent. How I happened to look down and say, there's a flying, or a coin, you know, and see it.
12 foot.
12 foot down.
What's the most unusual thing you've ever found in a privy?
Oh, Lord, don't ask me that.
Small
It's-
child skeleton.
Well, it was kind of,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say it was sort of X-rated, kind of. It was so surprising because we're in the north side of Cincinnati. These were homes built, I wanna say they were 1880s, 1890s homes. And the privies were deep there. They were every bit of 14 feet deep, and they were large stone lined things. We were digging in the winter time, and it was super cold out, I remember that. And in the bottom of this privy, I look down, there's some water starting to build up in the bottom. And I look down and I see something that's just an odd shape, and I pick it up, it's like a rock. I pick it up, and I look at it, and I'm like, what in the world? And I swished it around a little bit of water down there in the bottom, looked at it closer. It's dark down there, it's starting to get late. And it was a carved men's genitalia. Of all the things I would never expected a Victorian privy to have, but that's what it was. It was like soapstone or something. I don't know if it was somebody found it was Native American and then somebody made them throw it away, or if it was something naughty Victorian. I don't know, but it was the most bizarre thing I've ever found, most unusual. And I'm sorry I had to tell that, but you did ask the question.
Did you keep it?
No, somebody else took it to pick. I was digging with another guy, and the way you do a privy dig typically, everybody has their own rules, but you draw numbers to see who picks first, second, third, whatever. And the guy that got first pick took it. He figured it might have been Native American, or it was highly detailed, highly carved. It was professionally done, or somebody that took time anyways.
How do you get the dirt out of a 12-foot square hole? You just bucket it out? with
By
a-
hand with shovels and
This isn't a
5
fast
gallon
operation.
No, they
No, it
mix, they sift the dirt even.
Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes. It takes so long to do them anymore, I don't even do that anymore, but.
You did that in Spring Valley though.
Yeah, we have. we'll just rope, 5-gallon
Put a
bucket.
tripod up overhead? pull
I
it.
have done that in the past, but anymore, the best way to do a privy dig is to find somebody half my age that'll do the digging, and I just pull the buckets of dirt up and dump them on the side.
Yeah,
That's the last one I did.
I
That's
grew
how
up
I
with a
did it.
privy outhouse, and I helped the neighbor dig a 60 or 70-foot lined well once. And gee, and that
Yeah, that'd be a heck of a
was
job
all
there.
Yeah, they said about sifting, we sifted there, I found a little identification bracelet.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find a lot. I mean, it's wise to sift that dirt, it really is, but
The
I
top of an incense burner.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just takes so long to do a privy dig. I mean, I look at it as an all-day adventure, 6 to 8 hours, so.
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah, I mean,
That's with more than one bunch of people.
when I said earlier I went down to North Carolina to dig with Scott Given, well, Scott Given is a one-man show. He finds a privy, he digs it himself, but down there they're typically like 4 foot deep, 5 foot deep, so 6 foot's a deep one. But so he was digging his own hole, and I was digging my own hole, and I was used to 3 or 4 guys, somebody resting, people pulling buckets, dumping dirt, digging, you know, and he had me one, well, I lasted 3 days, I had to go back to Dayton, I was tired. I couldn't handle it.
What's, the best coin you found this session?
I gotta think about that. Well, if you talk about rarity, potential book value, I don't know, surprisingly, and I did really well in the nickel department, I found a beautiful 1886 V nickel. But it's got the environmental damage, so it was probably extremely fine or better when it was dropped, and probably grade very good or something, you know. And that's a very low match, it's second key coin in the series. I found a lot of wonderful silver. 1823 is the oldest silver I found. It was a cap bust dime. I had a one year where I was doing really well with $half, and some guys were calling me $half or something for a while there. We went to, were you there on the park one down outside of Cincinnati? Yeah.
At the White House where we used to meet, we actually.
Oh yeah, we found one there. I found one there too.
Yeah, it was funny, because you got it, you called it before you got it, and I called the date.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I wanna find one of these days. And Steve said, well, you will for long. 6 days later, I found it.
Yeah.
He called that one too.
Yeah, I was finding a lot of $half that year. It was wonderful, but the one that stands out in my mind, we were out in one of those Cincinnati Park woods down on the west side, I want to say. I forget what that was called. And there were some old houses up there that I was told they were old houses, but when we went up there and looked at the foundation where they tore them down and the materials they're made out of, I was like, these aren't old homes. So I started getting discouraged, and I was looking for something else that might attract people back in the day. And I was gonna go, because there's a lot of woods there. And I noticed there was sinkholes, natural sinkholes that funneled down into underground caverns somewhere, whether they were big enough for people to get in, I couldn't tell you, but some sort of underground drainage, and there were sinkholes everywhere. So I saw 2 great big ones, and I thought, you know, people might have wanted to picnic, or the kids played around them or something, so I'm gonna go down there and swing around them. And I got down there and I swung, and I saw like $half read, and I'm like, nah, not out here in the middle of the woods. So I dug a barber half. I'm like, wow. So then I started swinging again, a second barber half. And then I went and looked for everybody. I had to have everybody come over and see what the heck I was finding. And when most of them were back, I found a third barber half. And then somebody else was bottom feeding off to the side, and I think Mark found a mercury head dime.
Yeah, he was mentioning it.
But I was like, wow, that was amazing out there. And it was just that whole year of just $half like everywhere. So that was an enjoyable year. But I still have never found a Seed of Liberty quarter. That was always a bucket list of mine. And found I've done really well in Stanley Liberty quarters. And the one thing I did from the get-go, like I said, I was a coin collector before I was a metal detector, so I went and bought used Whitman coin albums, the blue ones predominantly, and my goal in metal detection is to fill every hole, every date, mint mark. So I've done really well with Mercury Head dimes. I have not done nearly as well with Roosevelt dimes. I found way more different Mercury Heads. I know there's a lot more of them to begin with, but I've sold lots of scrap Mercury Head dimes over the years because I had so many repeats of stuff. I've done that several years actually, but there's a time where, you know, I'd go out and that one honey hole was like 12 silver day, so, you know, dimes and stuff would really start stacking up. And you'd find worn barbers or you'd find nice Mercs, you know, at the same place.
Tell them about the first hunt we had at Ron's place, the first club hunt.
The first club
And
hunt
what you
was
found there.
held at Ron's. We were trying to come up with an idea, and Ron was gracious enough. He's got a Ohio vintage farm out there that has a really good age. The farmhouse that's currently there is what, 1849, I believe. And there was probably a starter home, a log cabin or something back in the back somewhere. And we got to metal detect that property, and there was, I remember Tab found a Stanley recorder.
Up by the front side of the house.
Yeah, up by the house, and I was happy to find a Seat of Liberty Carson City silver dime.
Centennial.
Yeah, it's
1870.
1876 Carson City.
I called that one to the date when you found it.
Yep, that was a neat find. And then, there was, let's see, I found an 1825 large cent, and after a little bit later, one of the guys found a Spanish half real.
Yeah, Terry,
Yeah.
back in the backfield.
And let's see, that was the first year. The second year, do you remember where we went the second
Then we
year?
go to Kentucky.
That might have been the
That's
second
what we
year.
did, that's.
Virginia, I think, was first,
That's
and then
yeah.
Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, we did. We did
Yeah.
digging in Virginia where we paid a property owner down there money to detect a property that was along a route for the Civil War troops or something. It ended up being very overgrown and hard to detect and wasn't quite what I expected. Manny kind of set it up through somebody that he'd met or something. I'm
Yeah,
not sure how.
somebody he met, a friend's wife.
Through the military or something maybe, or I don't remember, but.
He found a revolver.
He found a revolver, but it wasn't Civil War age,
No.
it was 1900s, probably mid-century or
That's
something.
where you got your loss too.
Didn't somebody find a bayonet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a bayonet, that's right, it was a bayonet.
Bayonet, a
We
gold
found-
ring.
Us bottle collecting and soda collector guys, we found bottle dumps, and there was some pretty nice bottles and cans in the dumps. Actually went back there, other times since then, to search that area and other areas down there.
Did anybody ever find gold?
They did on that trip. Gold ring was in a bag.
No, I mean gold coins. Anybody ever found a gold coin?
Gold coins always been on my bucket list. I've known a lot of friends over the years that have found gold coins. One guy found one across from the fairgrounds along the NCR side of this sidewalk through there, $5 gold piece, I remember. I've found a lot of gold jewelry, but I've not found a gold ring.
Jim Brown found in a park a gold coin, but it wasn't old, it was like, one of these.
Pandas or
mint
something,
days.
yeah.
Yeah, just in, park off Dorsey Lane there, no, Delco, but the other.
Black Hawk or something?
Yeah, one of them, yeah, they found it there. They figured
Oh,
some
down
kid
the middle of that.
were playing pirates or something, and his dad was part of it. That's the only gold coin I know that somebody in the club was there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a tough find. It's like the white whale bucket lister of just about everybody, I think, and you read very few times about people finding gold.
Oh, I knew that, I just, I've never heard anybody tell me, oh, I found a gold coin.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
If you lost a gold coin back when gold coins were in circulation, you probably had the whole family out there for 2 days trying to find it. So,
Would you wanna take a break now? People get, the pizza well is still,
I second the motion.
okay.